we found that somewhere right around here seems to be best. Right here. That way you're good TV site. Perfect. Right. There you go.
So which is for? So Pledge of Allegiance is for?
You can turn around and look at the flag. There you go. Perfect.
Recording in progress.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, now the land acknowledgement.
The Pacifica School District acknowledges that we gather on the unceded ancestral homelands of the Robertson Alone people. As guests, we humbly extend our gratitude to the Robertson Ohlone elders and community. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland, and we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples.
As the original stewards of this land, the Ramaytush Ohlone understand the interconnectedness of all things and the importance of maintaining harmony with nature. Likewise, Pacifica School District commits to teaching our school community how to be responsible stewards of this land.
Great. All right, thank you.
Was there any news that you wanted to share with us about Ocean Shore School? What's going on at Ocean Shore?
What's going on at Ocean Shore, guys?
We're doing the Winter Bazaar tomorrow.
Oh, tell us about that. If you've never been to the Winter Bazaar, what should someone know?
The Winter Bazaar happens every year at Ocean Shore. Well, maybe except for the COVID years, but where we do a sale for the community and for the resource center and for charity, and all the classrooms come together and make like crafts and arts for selling, like they're like $1, $3, $5, and we donate them to charity.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic, and that's a long time tradition at Ocean Shore,
Yeah.
right? Okay, fantastic.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much.
That's tomorrow.
Yeah.
5:30. We have auction baskets.
Okay. All right, thank you so much for coming in this morning, or this evening, whatever it is.
And families and students, we do like to give you the opportunity to not have to stay for the entire meeting. You are absolutely welcome, but we recognize that the students probably have homework and other things, so please feel free if you'd like to slip out. No need to stay, or you can stay. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job, thank you.
All right, Barbara, would you take the roll call, please?
Yes, trustee Burdall.
Here.
Trustee Burkini.
Here.
Trustee Dog is absent. Trustee Patel.
Here.
And trustee Villalobos.
Here.
Thank you.
The district records the audio portion of the meetings. All recordings are kept in the superintendent's office for 30 days and are available during the time period for inspection by members of the public on district equipment without charge. In-person speakers wishing to address the board on agenda or non-agenda items, please complete a request card with your name, address, and the item number and submit it to the board president or the superintendent. You'll be called to address the board and may speak up to 3 minutes. Virtual speakers wishing to address the board on agenda or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name and agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A area of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You will be called to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted and you may speak up to 3 minutes. After you've spoken, your microphone will be muted. The board met in closed session regarding the public employee performance evaluation of the superintendent. No action was taken. All right. So on to approval of the minutes. Are there any questions regarding the minutes of November 2nd, 2022? All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of November 22nd, 2022, regular board meeting trustees?
I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
A second. Barbara, will you please take the vote?
All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 4-0.
All items on the consent agenda will be approved in one motion, which is not debatable, and which requires a unanimous vote for passage. If any member of the board, the superintendent, or the public so request, any item shall be removed from the section and placed in the regular order of business following approval of the consent agenda. Are there any questions regarding the agenda or the consent agenda? All right, no questions. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda, consent agenda?
A motion to approve the agenda, consent agenda.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Barbara, will you take the vote?
Yes, all in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 4-0.
Can I just take a little note that I'd like to recognize that in that consent agenda, in the personnel changes, Mrs. Kathy Elderson was just appointed the interim principal for Ingrid B. Lacey beginning in January. So while that may have come in the consent agenda, it was a very important move. And that means that Mr. Stafford will move from his interim position back to the administrator of special projects.
All right, so communications. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda items or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name and agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A area of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You'll be called to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted and you will speak for up to 3 minutes. After you have spoken, your microphone will be muted. First speakers will be from LSCA.
I see Megan on Zoom. Hang on, Megan, I don't hear you.
Dr. Olson?
Yes?
Could you mute your one?
Yes, I will. Okay, I'm muted. Can we hear you again, Megan? No sound.
She
can unmute now.
She's on mute now.
Yeah.
And now she's off. Now she's not.
Try again.
Go ahead, Megan.
Try again, Megan.
She's not on the screen. She's on my screen.
She's on my screen as well. Will, are you sharing your screen? Is that?
No.
Yeah, maybe go to gallery. That's somebody's computer.
We heard it. It was just working.
Maybe we should move her down and bring her back up.
Alright, change role to attendee.
I can't hear you guys at all now.
I turned mine on.
That was Megan.
That was
I'm gonna
Megan.
change your pronoun to Oh.
Okay.
It's
Okay,
coming through my.
crank it up as high as you can.
Yes.
We
I
can't.
can't hear anybody. Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Megan, can you hear me?
I will.
Yeah, okay, so it's for some reason, it's going through my screen for some reason. I don't get that why, but we can hear you and I can hear you.
And only the people who are on Zoom can see you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, are we ready?
Yep, nice and loud,
All right,
please.
good evening. Yesterday was our our first bargaining session of the year, and it was a good day. The start of the negotiation session is typically slow, but yesterday we came to agreements on 3 high priority items that LSCA and the district needed to get done. We look forward to sharing the details with our members at our union meeting tomorrow. These items have been points of conversation with LSCA and our HR director, Dr. Carla Chavez Torres. Through this communication with her, much of the work was done and ready to go. While the superintendent has not met with us since October, we have continued to have meetings and check-ins with Carla. Lines of communication with her are open and clear. We are grateful for her work and attention. Our membership continues to have concerns about our outdated K-5 report card, planning for TK next year, the domino effect of no stubs on a school site each day, and questions about our lack of and outdated curriculums in core content areas. We negotiate again on Tuesday, and we will be jumping into the items both parties sunshined. We hope to tick more items off the list through the interest-based bargaining process.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next
No, I'm
up,
just here.
CSEA.
No technology
Makes
difficulties.
it easier, though. All right, hello, my name is Nicole Sayers, and I am president of CSEA Chapter 128. Tonight, I'd like to welcome new CSEA members Sarah Stewart, a Playworks paraprofessional at Ocean Shore School, Bonnie Maffey, a paraprofessional Playworks at Valamar, Adrian Bulantini, a paraprofessional at Cabrillo, Tom Huntalis, paraprofessional and Playworks at Cabrillo, and Zach Quigley, groundskeeper for our district, and we certainly need that. So welcome to everybody. I also want to acknowledge a retirement of Marina Lorente, paraprofessional at Ortega. The CSEA Above and Beyond recipients for December are Maria Ocampo and Nassim Anjou. Maria Ocampo, 25 years with the district, the day custodian at Sunset Ridge. If you're lucky enough to see Maria, she'll be the person smiling and asking how your day is going as she's cleaning, setting up the lunch recycling stations, and or emptying garbage cans. The second recipient, Nassim Anjum, the crossing guard at Valamar School. Nassim is a dedicated employee who keeps children and their families safe as they cross busy Reina Del Mar. She is responsible every day as she is on the job early in the morning to help cross that first student as they come to school. Her job can be dangerous, but she always does it with a smile. I want to thank the district for ordering the service pins for the employees who have served 5 years and above. We named all those individuals at the last meeting, and I won't do it again. And then the district went to each school site to give the pins to those who earned them. They also bought the most delicious pastry with chocolate and like layers. Oh my gosh, it was very, very delicious. And I thank the district for listening to us and making this event truly special for those involved. The district is also going to continue the collaboration with CSEA while continuing to offer the CSEA Summer Assistance Program to our CSEA members. Last year, CSEA introduced this to the district, and they saw as much value in it as CSEA did. They made us an offer, and we took it. CSEA convinced a large number of eligible members to take advantage of the program. Since then, the district has been taking a designated percentage out of members' paychecks monthly. But this next August, members will receive a dollar for dollar saved. I look forward to that day and the happiness that this is going to bring those members. We also look forward to recruiting all our new members into this program. CSEA is excited to announce that our collective bargaining agreement, which has been out of date for the last 6 years, has been negotiated and signed off on. The next steps is for CSEA to print enough copies for the members that we have and the anticipated members that we hope to hire. Printing will take a few days and we can distribute after the holidays. I sincerely thank the CSEA and district negotiation teams. I want to wish everybody very happy holidays, but there is one more thing. There was an accident this week at Valamar School. The crossing guard, Nassim Ajum, was hit and injured by a driver as she was crossing 2 children across the street. I want us all to concentrate on her health and recovery, but I also want everyone to understand that her hourly salary wage is $16.01 an hour, and then she works approximately a couple hours a day, 4 days a week. This is not enough to qualify for medical benefits from our district. Nassim and all the crossing guards have a tremendous responsibility towards the children and the families that they assist every day. Crossing guards are often put into dangerous positions as drivers simply are not all respectful to pedestrians, even pedestrians with big signs to remind them to stop. Please keep her in your good thoughts, and let's think about doing better for our employees in the months ahead. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We have an issue right now where no one on Zoom can hear or see anything, so we're working on that.
Okay, well
Thanks,
then,
Nicole.
thank you.
Thank you.
People wishing to address the board here in the room. Anyone? Okay, cards.
No cards.
Okay.
And the only questions are, Michelle Gray says, my screen looks as if we're looking at Barbara's screen. Perhaps she's leading now, which is why we can't hear.
Perhaps I'm what?
It says that perhaps it's, that what they're saying is your screen.
Well, I'm seeing Will. Are you seeing Will as well?
No.
That's all I see is Will.
Oh, no, that's because you have to go to the corner there and go to view and then do gallery. And then you see everybody. Up in the right-hand corner, so where it says view, and you click gallery.
You have to close the chat.
It's there. You can see it. It's right in the corner.
Let's just give it a couple minutes, see if we can, since people are interested in the topics.
And hit gallery. And then, yeah, now you can see everybody.
Okay. Well, other people wishing.
I'm having some
Online.
technical problems. If we would like to take a break so I can figure it out, that would help.
5 minutes, would that be?
I hope so.
I mean, the reality too is that we can continue the meeting since we are also holding it in person. So we can continue the meeting and then hopefully by the presentation parts, it'll get fixed.
The
How's that?
meeting is live right now on TV.
Okay.
The problem is on Zoom.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. So anybody who's having difficulty watching this on Zoom, if you go to the Pacific Coast Television, that you should be able to see it. That's a good answer.
Yeah, that's good. What if they want to, say something?
If they want to participate, I don't currently have anybody in that group, but if they should want to participate, like we ended up getting Megan on, I think we can do that.
Okay. Seeing that I don't have anyone in the room wishing to address the board, I will move on to correspondence. Superintendent?
I do not have any correspondence.
Okay, anything else? All right, then, board and superintendent communications. Who would like to start?
I don't have much with Thanksgiving break in there. There was a special ed parent social this morning that was very well attended. And it's always really nice to just be there with all the parents, and it's a really good atmosphere, and they can get a lot of their questions answered. And then last week was prep for the band concerts, but unfortunately due to illnesses, those have been delayed, and hopefully will be next week. So it was supposed to be last night and tomorrow night, hopefully it'll be next Tuesday and Thursday.
That is correct. And I had said to somebody, I think Mr. I said, back in the old days, we would have never canceled a band concert, even if someone was sick, and now it's just a reality.
Thank you.
The only correspondence is I attended the CSBA conference this past week with Superintendent Olson and Trustee Bricchini. And a lot of good information that we're excited to share out on.
Let's see, right before Thanksgiving, I attended the joint articulation meeting. And this is a community meeting with the mayor, Kevin Woodhouse, the water department, which I was very impressed with this this time around because they're doing a lot of interesting things, and one thing I'll share with you is they're taking like screens or nets and they're using them up at Fairmont and they're catching the fog water in there. And they're trying to figure out how to use that somewhere. And I thought, wow, that would be a really good field trip, you know?
I know a school that has a lot of fog water. There's a couple.
Let's see, for Jefferson Union High School District, their workforce housing is up and running, and Andy Lee mentioned that at the beginning of school year, they had 0 vacancies for staff, so they were able to fill all of their positions before the year started. And then I also attended the CPAC, and the agenda was on transitions from preschool all the way up to high school. And I did receive a couple emails from parents. That's it.
I also attended the joint articulation meeting, and I agree with that. Fog collection was really, really cool to figure about. I also did attend the California State Board Association conference down in San Diego, and went a day early so I could attend the day-long president's workshop. But again, just lots of great information, and happy, excited to kind of bring it back to our school district. And that's kept me busy the last few weeks.
I just got back from the California School Board Association meeting, and we were planning on debriefing next Wednesday, but that doesn't make sense because you're not going to be there. So I do think that probably should be a January topic, just because you would be interested in that topic. This afternoon I was at Sunset Ridge doing a principal evaluation, observed in a staff meeting, and they went for the staff meeting, they went around 2 different classrooms and looked for either written objectives, learned objectives, or stated objectives, and one of the classrooms had their own land acknowledgement in it. They wrote it themselves, so that was pretty impressive. So it was, our schools are doing great work, and you're going to see that today during the SIPSs, and I'm just humbled by the work that our students and our teachers are doing together.
All right, do we want to wrap back and make sure that we're okay on the online? Are we okay?
Any luck?
Nothing pressing in the Q&A.
Scott says the YouTube stream is, that actually might be Mara, is the YouTube stream is working though, which is nice. So anybody who cannot use it, get this through Zoom, please feel free to head on over to YouTube.
Okay, all right, we'll continue on. District goals. The district values the goals provided in our local control accountability plan and strategic plan. All of our district agenda items are tied to these goals. 1 or more goals are listed in the description of each board agenda item. The details for each of those district goals can be accessed on our district website at www.pacificasd.org. All right, so your certificate, first interim report 2022, working group information.
Okay.
So Speaker Josie Peterson.
I'll just introduce this just a bit. So this is Josie's typical first interim, but it's also Trustee Villalobos had wanted the information on the working group, and these two are paired. You're going to find the working group information to be a little bit outdated, but Josie will present that, and then we'll answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Olson. So you can go ahead and...
Yeah, so on Zoom, they're seeing this.
They're not seeing.
They're seeing that on Zoom. That's
Oh.
good.
Okay, perfect.
That's good.
So I should be able to continue on that there.
Okay. So this is really just the contents of the report, so you can go ahead and move forward. So the first interim report, if you remember, the board adopted the budget back in June. So the first interim report is our next report to the board, and it contains the actuals as of October 31st, and then it also contains projected activity through the end of the year. So it is much more accurate than the adopted budget that the board approved back in June. It contains very detailed budget information and multi-year projections. This is a summary of the entire report is well over 100 pages, and it's attached if anybody wants to look at the details. And so this is a broad summary of the budget report. Go ahead and move forward. So this is just to show you the state COLA, which is the cost of living adjustment that the governor gives to school districts. Back in the adopted budget is the first column, and then the final state budget. And this is the first time in a while that I've seen the COLA percentages predicted in May and June be exactly the same as what the state adopts. So there really was no change in the cost of living adjustment for this year or projected in the next 2 years going out. Go ahead and move forward. So state revenues, we've talked a lot about local control funding formula. So that is how Pacifica School District is funded. And as we talk a little bit more in the working groups, we'll try to be a little bit more clear. But the state funding is really based on the students that attend school. So it's average daily attendance. And there's an amount per student, per grade level, and per student designation. Now, the difficulty in San Mateo County and in California, but mostly in San Mateo County, is when school districts receive more property taxes than what the LCFF entitlement is, then they're called community funded. And that happens because they have such a large property tax base. And that's the message that we're going to try to start conveying better when you see the working group. It's a complicated formula, and it's complicating the budget. But San Mateo County is unique in that districts have been flipping between state funded, which is LCFF funded, and community funded, which means they have so much property taxes, they get more. And Pacifica is really at the bottom because we don't get that amount of property taxes. So that's just a very brief definition of the differences in LCFF and community funded. Please go ahead and go forward. So new state funding, what wasn't in the state budget or in our budget in June, which the state adopted afterwards, is additional LCFF investment. And what that is the governor added 6.7% in addition to the COLA, and that's an increase to the base funding. So how much you receive per student was increased by 6.7%. And I'll show you later on how that correlated for Pacifica. Additionally, there was an arts, music, and instructional materials block grant that was added to the budget, and that's $1.7 million. Expanded learning opportunity is just under $1 million. And then if you remember just a few weeks ago in the November ballot, there was Prop 28. That doesn't take into effect until 2023-24, but the voters approved additional arts and music, which goes directly to the school sites. So the school sites will receive the actual allocation. It won't go to the district office, and that's $360,000. And right now, that's for 3 years, directly for the schools. And you can go ahead and move forward. So really, this is just a big snapshot of the school district revenues, just so you can see how Pacifica gets their revenues, and you can see that in the blue, we're pretty much dependent on state funding. 78% of our funds come directly from the state. Federal revenues represents only 5%, and then other state revenues like lottery is 13%, and very little local income in Pacifica. And that would be our parcel tax and grant funding like Pacifica Education Foundation, those types of things is 4%. And then if you move on, I'll show you the expenditures. So for expenditures, you can see that this is how Pacifica spends their money. And it's basically mostly employee compensation. When you look at the pie chart, you can see 46% goes to certificated compensation, and that includes salaries and retirement, health benefits, and all of the fixed payroll costs. Classified compensation is 19%. Administrators are 8%. And then you can see a small portion of the budget is on books and supplies, which is your student instructional materials and supplies for the schools. Other operating costs, that includes your utilities and contracted services. And that is pretty much all of the school district's expenditure budget. So go ahead and go forward.
Is typically in most school districts, you would see between 80 and 95% going, 80 and 90% going to salaries. And why that's different in Pacifica is because we have a number of contracted services in that other services category.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Dr. Olson. It's also lower when you have a lot of categorical funding or like the arts, music programs that is not going towards compensation. And then you'll see that less of the budget goes towards compensation. So you can go ahead and go forward. I think the next, this is a summary of the school district budget. And the first few columns is what was adopted in June, and then the first interim is the next few columns. And this is a very detailed breakdown. It shows all of the revenues and expenditures. And what I'm going to step you through in the next few slides is what's the difference from what you adopted in June and where we are now. So if you can go ahead and go forward. The biggest difference here in the revenues is the increase to the base funding. That was the 6.7% that the governor added in the final budget and some ADA COVID relief. So that came out to $2.3 million for Pacifica. And then federal revenue, we didn't quite have all the figures for some of the COVID funds, ESSER 3, Year 2, and expanded learning opportunity is $1.3 million increase. And then the revenues I told you about earlier that were not included in our budget, arts and music, and then also some special ed early intervention funds, and we didn't quite have all the figures for the universal TK pre-K program. So that's another $2.9 million increase in revenues in our budget. So total revenues increased for Pacifica from the time you adopted the budget until now to $6.6 million. And now I'll show you how the expenditures changed. So if you remember, we were fortunate that we were able to give a very generous salary increase to all of our employees at the end of last school year, which started on July 1st. We did not have that salary increase in our adopted budget. So you'll see all of the salaries increased because on average, there was a 7% salary increase for all of our employees. Certificated salaries increased by $1.3 million. There was also an additional increase for special educators. We now pay special educators a $5,000 stipend on top of their salary if they work in the special ed program. All of the classified salaries increased by 7%. And along with that, all of our employee costs went up. For our pension plans, which is the STIRS program for teachers and PERS, and all of the fixed payroll and health benefit increase. So that's just $775,000 increase. And then for books and supplies, that's kind of a broad category. It does include more than just books and paper. That increased $1.2 million, and a lot of that is computer purchases and site funds that were not spent last year were carried forward into this year and actually put in that category until the sites determine how they're going to spend those funds. Another area with a large increase is services and other operating. That's a very broad category. That includes, all of our contracted services, our operating costs like utilities, PG&E, and special education services, computer software licenses. That increased by $1.7 million. And a lot of that increase was due to the new state funds that are now included in the budget. We've been contracting out for cleaning services. We've also been contracting out for grounds. We've increased some of the contracted services in that area. We've also been serving our special education students, and there's been some increases there, and software licenses. So those are the explanations as to what are the differences between your adopted budget and where we are now. And the total expenditures went up about $5 million. So we can move forward. So here's a snapshot of a multi-year summary. We always want to show the current year and then show 2 years going forward to show that the district can meet its obligations during that time. And you can see the beginning fund balance and then the revenues. There is a breakdown of the revenues and then expenditures. and the ending fund balance. Now, most importantly is the district reserve. The district's required to reserve 3% of total expenditures for economic uncertainty, and we are going down, projected in the next 2 years, from just under 8% to 5.42% in reserves. And that's because we do go into a deficit spending in the second year and the third year, because the projected increased revenues going forward do not cover our increases, our ongoing increases in employee costs and our operating costs. And if you can go ahead and move forward. So this is a summary of the other funds. We talk a lot about the general fund, but the board does have other funds that we oversee. So in the general fund, you can see the balance did go up about $500,000, and that's because of the restricted funds that we just received for arts, music, and expanded learning. So that increased our fund balance because they're not all going to be spent in this fiscal year. We have an ending fund balance of funds will be spent in the next year as well. So we do meet our 3% reserve. It's $1.2 million. We have an ending fund balance in restricted of $3.1 million, and then unrestricted, undesignated of $1.2 million. So the next fund is our child nutrition fund, and the good news is in all the years I've been here, it's always been working at a deficit, as it's very difficult to maintain a food program at a profit. Well, because of the changes in the federal and state legislation and feeding all of the kids, the program actually made a profit last year and will continue to make a profit this year. And that's because everyone's getting free meals. We're getting reimbursed.
Recording in progress.
And our operating costs are not that high. We're not serving really fresh, made from scratch food anymore because of COVID and because of the number of students being fed at this time. The next fund is deferred maintenance. So this is an area where we've been underfunded for many, many years. The state used to fund deferred maintenance for all districts, and the state used to give us $120,000 a year and require us to match that. Well, there is no more state funding for deferred maintenance. That's all because we're locally controlled. It's a local control funding, so it's up to us to fund deferred maintenance. And I know you've seen issues in the district where things haven't been maintained or fixed, and that's because of the deferred maintenance fund didn't have a solid plan as far as moving forward. So we are trying to put more funding towards that, and those funds go towards repairs, replacement, plumbing, heating, electrical, roofing, and flooring. And the bond has been very helpful in that area as far as building up some of those areas. Fund 17 is our special reserve fund, and that's where the board can designate additional funds for reserve. You can actually set aside funds in that fund in addition to the 3% required reserve. And that fund has a balance because many years ago when one of the schools, Portola, was annexed, there was legislation that this district was allowed to keep some of the ADA, and so at that time the board chose to put those funds in the special reserve fund and slowly use those funds as needed for unanticipated costs. Retiree benefits fund, that is for the employees when they retire. If you meet the qualifications, you're eligible for 10 years of health insurance and dental insurance when you retire. And so the district does need to be able to meet those obligations. There's $900,000 in that fund currently. If the district were to meet all of its obligations, the fund would have $13 million. But what we're doing is doing a pay-as-you-go method where we're paying the current costs each year and not setting aside money for future years. Right now, the current cost is about $600,000. There hasn't been any retirements in the last, huge retirements in the last few years, but when there is, it quickly goes up to the $900,000. So that's really enough money for 1 year of payments for your retiree benefits. And then the building fund, as you know, the bond measure that's where the bond funds are held, and that is going from a balance of $32 million to $18 million. And you can see all the projects that are being done across the district. So we pretty much encumbered that amount for this year. So the next fund is capital facilities. That's when there's construction in Pacifica, it's called developer fees. When somebody files a permit, they go to the city and pay a fee to Jefferson, and there's a split between Pacifica. Now, those funds are very restricted, and fortunately, we were able to match those funds with the Valley Mar expansion project, and so those funds will be spent this year. And then the last fund is Fund 40, which is the sale of site funds and the Heart Loan and expenditures for the workforce housing project. Okay, so fortunately, we have a positive certification, which means the district will meet its obligations for the current fiscal year and 2 years going out, and that's good news. So just to kind of, I know you guys are hearing the news. The legislative analyst just released his report on the outlook for the state, and they project a state deficit of $25 billion. You guys, we've heard the reasons why, the inflation, supply chain challenges, and the labor market. One of the things that will be interesting is if the schools are preserved with the governor's rainy day fund. So that's the hope. They have that fund that they've set aside, and we'll see what happens in January, May, when the governor comes out with next year's budget. And we can go forward. So that's the first interim, and then we have the fiscal outlook, so we have time now for discussion and questions.
About the budget, and then we'll do the presentation.
Okay, so are there any questions?
I promise this won't be too many questions. I'm actually just curious around, as you projected the next 2 years, around the impact of our any supplemental funds. Because of the child nutrition grant, everybody's getting free breakfast and lunch, which is amazing and awesome. Less of an incentive to fill out the forms that we would typically fill out in order to get that type of resource. So I'm just wondering, how are we doing on that? Do we feel like we have an accurate count of the makeup of our district?
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up, because that is a big concern of ours, and we were, really diligent about trying to get those numbers in. So what you're talking about is what they call unduplicated students, and those are your English learners and your free and reduced applications for the lunch program and your foster youth and homeless. And fortunately, CalPATS just came out, and we're at over 22%. So we need to maintain that in order to maintain that status. And for us, it's $1.2 million. So in the multi-year, we are projecting to really maintain that. Does that help?
Yeah, and I hope we do have an accurate count of that. And then the other question that I had was your comment around our fund balance in the future years, and you mentioned some of the insights from the analyst report from the state level. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, I mean, you're projecting 2 years, which is the requirement, but if that trend continues, we've only got like 2 or 3 more years of that before that fund balance is at zero. Yeah. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on, what, as you look forward, ways that the district can think about that.
Yeah, I think we really need to look closely at our expenditures going forward, and how, we're relying on the state COLAs, and those could be higher or lower, we don't know. But I think we need to be very cautious in the next 2 years as far as our spending, because you can see that we're going into deficit spending. And so we need to kind of tighten up on the budget, and we could be looking at budget cuts. Of course, if nothing improves, we will be looking at budget cuts in year 2 and in year 3. So I think that's a really good point. We've had a very good year. You see a lot of money. You've seen a lot of increases. A lot of those funds are restricted and specified for student learning and learning recovery. So on the unrestricted side of the general fund, we do have to carefully look at our budget. We have to look at our parcel tax, which we need to start going back for 2026, I believe, because it expires in that year or 2. So it's going to be challenging if the state COLAs do not improve, and if our attendance does not improve, because we are still in a declining enrollment. We've been given a grace period with using an average ADA over 3 years. well, it's good for this year, but if our attendance keeps going down, the average keeps going down, and then our revenues go down. So we've budgeted conservatively with the attendance and the enrollment, but, you know, we are reliant on the state for the COLA. So, I mean, it's a good point. We are going to have to start really looking at the budget and the reserves. And I would suggest trying to keep it above the 5% and not go below 5%.
And I thank you for that. And, you know, one of your slides, you showed all this additional state funding for arts and what have you. And so the only consideration I would want to have is how are we going to spend that money so that it doesn't create ongoing costs that we may not be able to meet in future years.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Well, actually, I had to just piggyback on that, the arts and music fund. So you say it's $360,000 for 3 years. First of all, how's that divvied up between?
You know, I actually, Will and I have the breakdown, but I didn't bring it. I could send it out in the, it's by school. It's actually posted on the school services.
Yeah, and 70% of the funding is based off overall enrollment, and then 30% of the funding is based off unduplicated pupils or those. And so each school gets a different amount based off the number of students that they have and how many unduplicated students that they have. So there is a breakdown of what estimated supposed to come, but there's no definitive numbers.
There are some very specific rules around it, though.
Yeah.
Like 90% of it has to be used for either classified or certificated salaries for arts, and that only 10% could be used with community partners. And, you know, for many, you'll see in the SIPSs that many of our schools do use community partners for some of those, and so it's not an exact rate. The other thing that is a little bit subtle, but it is when we have those one-time funds and they're in our budget, then we have to, our reserve has to be at least 3% of that. So by having more money, it requires that the reserve be higher than that, is one of the challenges as well. Good question, thank you.
Yeah, well, and I guess sort of piggybacking on what Trustee Patel said is just, and you're saying we actually have to hire teachers, which is great, is what we need, but then in 3 years, we're in a position where do we have to cut those positions now and or finding $360,000 a year to put back in, so it's just a tricky position to be in. So anyway, I was just curious about that, so now I know more information. Thank you.
There's also another fund called the Arts, Music, and Instructional Materials. That is the most flexible of all of the funding. It actually, that came prior to the money that's going straight to the school sites. It's very likely that we will use those monies for instructional materials when we're doing a science adoption and trying to do a phonics adoption. That money for us will most likely be used for instructional materials.
And I just wanted to note, one of the insights from the CSBA conference is that block grant you can also use for increases in costs for retirement and health benefits.
Yeah.
They mentioned that it's odd because it's called the arts block grant, but that is an allowable use.
And then the other piece that came out of one of our sessions in CSBA is they said, you know, times are going to get very lean, and so really consider holding on to that reserve. And when someone asked how much reserve do you need, the answer was more, right? It's like everybody needs more reserve. That will get us through a couple of lean years. Any other questions? Over?
Josie, I was just wondering if we have any money left over from the ESSER, the GEAR, and the ELO funds?
Yeah, the ESSER 1 and 2 are fully spent.
The ESSER 3 is fully encumbered, so by the end of the year will be fully spent. The GEAR 1 is fully spent, and the GEAR 2 is just partially spent.
Okay.
Was there another one you asked? Those are the
ELO?
No, that one is in progress.
Oh, okay. And you probably won't like me for this, but just for transparency, is there any way we can have like a
report so that we know exactly where that extra money came from, but in layman's terms, so that everybody
Yes.
can read it?
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, not like immediately, but you know, maybe like in 2 or 3 months or something.
Yeah, we did that with the COVID relief funds, the different categories of those, and now we've kind of moved more into, learning recovery, and that's what those funds are directly for students. So we can definitely put that together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other budget questions? So this is a positive certification that ultimately we're going to ask at the end of this presentation for your approval on that. I will also remind you that prior to COVID, we had a not positive certification. And so times do go up and down. So it's great to be able to have a positive certification. Okay, the next slides are the presentation, as close as we got to a fiscal reality working group. Oh, shucks, I thought we had okay, got it. So this is going to be the end slides that we had in May. That's when we finished that group. The slides were not done at that time. And what we recognized, originally we put this group together recognizing that Pacifica is a very low revenue school district and that we were not able to give compensation equal to our surrounding partners. And we are a very low revenue district in a very wealthy county. And so we contracted with Nate Levinson to facilitate those conversations. And we learned a lot of things, one of them being how difficult it is to communicate the nuances of California fiscal school district budgets. And so this is the presentation as it was done in May. There's still some additional work to do, but we also recognized from CSBA how really important it is to be crystal clear on communicating in terms of the budget. So I'll let Josie take that away.
Okay, so again, it was from May, we just changed the date for tonight. So to kind of give people an idea of where Pacifica gets its funds, there's 3 categories: the federal, the state, and the local. And people don't realize we get very little funding from the federal government on an ongoing basis. We did get some additional funding for COVID, but on an ongoing basis, we get Title I, Title II, and Title III. So Title I is your low socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and those funds are designated for those students, and $96,000 won't even pay for a teacher. Title II is your professional development for teachers, and $45,000 is not a huge amount for professional development. Title III is for your English learners. $35,000 is not adequate to pay for a teacher or a staff person to support the English learners. And then your federal individual with disabilities is your special education. It's just under $600,000. Our special ed budget is well over $5 million. So that's not a huge amount of money that goes towards special education. It helps, but just so people realize, we don't get a lot of funds from the federal government. It's less than $1 million out of our $40 million budget. And then state local control funding formula. These numbers are not updated. These are the numbers that we used in our presentations from last year. Districts that have a high concentration of the unduplicated students, some of our neighbors, they get additional funding called concentration funds, and Pacifica does not reach that category. We're nowhere near the 50%. We're in the 22% range. And then our parcel tax is $1.3 million, and since it expires in 2027, we really do need to start working on that in 2025, so we can go out in 2026, a year ahead, to renew that parcel tax. And then our bond measure, 55 million, we've done a lot, but when you look at it, we were looking, the facility master plan, we could have easily used 100 million. We're fortunate we have the 55 million though, and you can see everything around us, that it's made a huge difference for our students. So go ahead and move forward.
I lost control. Lost control of me. Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. So this is kind of the same explanation earlier, but if you can go ahead and go to the buckets. I like the buckets, and I have to keep putting that in the budget presentations. So this is a pictorial, so you can see what is state aid. It's a minimum guarantee based on how many students you have in their seats. And school districts have property taxes that you use first, and then the state makes up the difference. San Mateo County is just so unique that most of the school districts are community funded. Most of them have more property taxes, and Pacifica is just not in that category. And that's what we've tried. We've worked so hard in this working group to kind of explain why is Pacifica, why don't we have that property tax base? So you can go ahead and go forward. So here's a chart that we put together on the school districts, and it is outdated, but Pacifica's at the bottom, and we're still at the bottom of the funding in the county. You can see at the top is almost 30. Pacifica is just under $12,000 per student. That's a huge difference for the students when we only get $12,000 per student, and our neighbors get $37,000. Go ahead and go forward. So why is Pacifica so low funded? And it's basically the property taxes. We looked at, you look, and Pacifica just does not have the businesses that some of our neighbors have. We don't have the tech companies. We don't have a high property tax base. You do see some turnover in the housing, but it's not enough to push us in anywhere close to generating that amount of property taxes. We don't have a lot of construction. We haven't historically had a lot of construction. So we just generate a lot less funding than our neighbors. Our parcel tax is very good, but it's also a lot less when you look at our neighboring school districts. Our education foundation, we are so fortunate that we have that program. It is also less than some of what our neighboring school districts generate. So, those are just some of the reasons why Pacifica, falls to the bottom in funding. Go ahead and go forward. So it's just, again, why is educational funding in California so low despite, the wealth and the high tax returns? California spends less than the average, than on national average on K-12 education. And then you have to adjust it for the labor. If you adjust it for the labor cost, California continues to spend far less than other states. And then because of the high cost of living, we've seen it over and over again. It's so hard to hire teachers and staff because the cost of living is so high. California's, the highest poverty districts are further away from adequate funding. Our high state tax rates, you look at other states and their tax rates are much less. It's much more affordable for people to live in other states. California spent more on education before the 1978's Proposition 13, severely limiting the growth of property taxes. So just some more information on, and you can see the references at the bottom of where this information comes from. Go ahead and go forward. California's revenues now rely heavily on income tax, so that's another thing we're looking at in the state budget. As you've heard some big layoffs, and if there's a lower tax base, that's why the state of California now is looking at a $25 billion deficit next year. With less property taxes, the schools are more dependent on state funds than in other states. Not so much in San Mateo County, but that does apply to Pacifica School District. State spending on education has grown at a slower rate than spending on other program areas. School district costs are increasing faster than revenues. We all know that. The increases in our pension obligations and our benefits, The cost of living, the increases it does take money away from the classrooms. And you saw that in our expenditure charts, where are our funds going? It's going more towards employee costs versus actually towards the students. Many school districts are experiencing declining enrollment. Definitely here in Pacifica, it's still over 300 students that we've lost since before COVID. We haven't been able to make that up. We've still been in a slight decline. And it's without intervention, the pandemic-induced recession is likely to put districts in financial distress. So, that's kind of where our multi-year is looking, is that we're looking at some deficit spending moving forward. And we just have to be very mindful of that. So you can go ahead and go forward. So this is, kind of an interesting thing. If we have a little bit less than 2,800 students now, but $1,000 would be $2.8 million for Pacifica. And what would that pay for? 28 more teachers. You could lower class sizes, 10 counselors, and 18 teachers, or more classified staff. So Pacifica could do a lot with, $1,000 more per student. Go forward. So this is also outdated, but we did have school services put together the next few charts for us. So this is from 2021, and they took our school district is the first column, the state average, and then they did a comparative group of like school districts, like Pacifica. And
in
so,
San Mateo County.
Yeah.
So they're not exactly like, but since that's who we naturally compare ourselves to, that's important information.
Yeah, that's a good point. So ours, the entry-level salary was at that time under $50,000. We've been able to significantly increase that. And then you look at our neighbors, it's $51,000 and then $57,000. And it goes along with the BA plus 60, the highest salary, and then they did a computed average. So with the computed average, ours is under 60,000 and 90,000 is the comparative group. That's a $30,000 difference in San Mateo County, where people are, dealing with the high cost of living, making it more difficult for Pacifica to hire teaching staff. On the other side, our health benefits are on the high side. Our district covers full family Kaiser health benefits and dental benefits, where you look at some of our neighbors, they have like a cap on health insurance, or they'll cover single or two-party. So in that area, we're at 27,000, and the comparative group was 14,000. I guess the difficulties there is that you can't pay your rent, with that. So that was just one of the charts we put together. You can go ahead and go forward. Here's what our health benefits looked like in 2021. Taking the number of employees, 48 of the employees did not have health benefits for classified. That's attributed to a lot of part-time employees, because you have to work 4 hours to be able to get CalPERS health benefits. So with certificated, it was 22, and then you can see the breakdown between one party, two party, and full family. So we had a lot of employees in the full family category, and then you have the annual cost of just, if it was Kaiser only, at the bottom of that chart. You can go ahead and go forward. And this was the total compensation comparison for 2021. It's very similar to the other chart with the salaries and the benefits. This is added together. And at the computed average at the bottom, it's when you take into account the health benefits, there's only a $20,000 difference between our district and the comparative group. And you go ahead and go forward. So basically, this is, this was back from last year, and it's still applicable. But the future is always uncertain in California. We're just heavily reliant on the state. The uncertainties of being LCFF and community funded. At one point last year, the county told Pacifica that we were going to flip into community funded, and that lasted less than a month. The county recalculated the property taxes, and Pacifica did not flip, and they've projected that we're not going to flip this year. We're still far off. We're heavily reliant on the governor. What is the January proposal going to be, and then what will it look like in May, and then the final state budget. And as Nidhi pointed out, we're always in jeopardy of losing supplemental funding. if we don't keep that percentage above 20%. So we have to really watch that area as well, because those funds go directly to those students, and it's at $1.2 million that we can use to support those students. So we have to be careful that we don't make long-term commitments with one-time money. We're receiving a lot of one-time money this year, a lot of one-time money last year. We have not made ongoing commitments with one-time funds. Student enrollment, healthcare, and pension costs. So as Dr. Olson stated, this presentation is not completed. We last met in June, and we haven't had our final meeting and completed the final presentation. So I think there's.
These are at this point out of date, just because it was what we were talking about in spring. Can you just go back just one? So the one thing that really stuck out in this working group is that when you generally pull a group together, there's always like, oh, we really have to keep this great thing, or we really don't have this thing. And in this case, the two things that really truly stood out, and it wasn't a bunch of things, but number one, employee compensation. That was an absolute priority across groups, as well as for parents. And then is maintaining so after the pandemic, we put a counselor at every school, and that was absolutely something that groups agreed that they wanted to continue to maintain. And so as we do any kind of long-term planning, when we use the one-time funding for the counselors, we want to make sure that there are multiple years encumbered so that we can use that. I think with the increased funding from the state, as well as balanced with some one-time funding, we will be able to continue that because we see that as a priority in terms of the need, but also in terms of feedback that we receive across employee groups. So that is the presentation. It's, I think the ideal way is to continue to get it more simple and more simple and more simple so that it can be presented so that people understand that. I think I continue to, people do not understand what a low revenue school district this is. They compare us like, oh, I pay a lot in my property taxes, so therefore, I think that just has to be the continued message that we all continue to bring out. So, questions or discussion?
Any questions? I have one. Okay, I guess my one question really was, has the county done any studies about the LCFF and community funding, and when they think we may actually tip over to community funding and stay there? Or is there any kind of talk on that?
They do try. They're reliant on the county assessor's office in projecting the property taxes. So the assessor's office has to provide it to our county office, and they have tried to do projections, and I just recently talked to her, and we're not close. They try to give us a heads up like they tried to do last year and said, oh, it looks like you're flipping, and but then when the assessor's office adjusted the property taxes, we didn't. So our county office tries really hard to look at the difference between the LCFF and the community funded, but they are reliant on the assessor's office, and right now they don't have any kind of projection going forward.
So they don't know or feel like 5 or 10 years or any of that?
They don't have it at this point, but they do they called me and said, oh, I gotta give you a heads up, it looks like you're gonna flip. They do try, and she did, I have to look at the list, she did email me who is still LCFF, and I wanted to share that with you just so you knew how few LCFF districts there are, and I'll try to get that.
Okay. Well, fingers crossed.
We are probably within 5 years is kind of a ballpark of that, but I will say to you that it's not necessarily a better thing if it's about the same amount of revenue. It's the funding stream changes as the property tax increases, but until that property tax really increases, if it's the same amount of money, it doesn't matter that much where it comes from. And the part that is hard is the flipping back and forth. So you need to prepare for even more uncertainty.
All right, well, thank you.
Just a quick comment. I thought that was a very clear presentation and for one of the first times, a very clear is the only word I can think of. That's not entirely scary, but a clear picture of where our district stands. And one question that I have is, how do we share, once you continue to refine the presentation, how do we share this with other, the city council or what have you? Because I think this isn't a district issue. This is an issue that the entire community, I think, needs to be fully aware of. And we have our channels to communicate to our parents, but to future parents, to everybody, this is I think would be an interesting discussion to have. So I just putting that out there of how can we communicate this broadly when you're ready.
Yeah, and the one thing and the purpose around doing the working group is, again, I felt like we were probably, I initially thought that maybe we would be going out for a parcel tax or something, and it became clear from doing this that people didn't really understand the low revenue part yet, and so getting that message out was really important. I also think that it's really important that all members of our community are speaking the same message, so that we're not fighting over every dollar, but it's like, no, there aren't enough dollars. It's not like we're fighting over the piece of pie. We need the pie to be bigger, right?
I think just answering Needy's question is, I think before we've done a joint meeting with Jefferson Union High School District, so maybe it'd be possible to do a joint meeting with City Council so that we are getting the information out to the people who usually go to City Council meetings as well. It's just an idea. And maybe also Jefferson Union High School District again.
Right, any other questions?
Thank you, Josie.
Oh, thank you.
Good job, Josie, thank you.
So, do I have a motion to approve the certification of the first interim report for 2022 through 2023?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And the second?
I'll second.
All right, Barbara, will you take the vote?
Yes, all in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 4-0.
All right, our next item is the 2023-24 school calendar.
All right, good evening, Board of Trustees and Dr. Olson. Tonight, it is recommended that the board approve the school calendar for the 2023-2024 school year. The displayed draft calendar was created jointly by LSEA and the Pacifica School District. An initial meeting was held on October 17, 2022 with LSEA to draft the calendar, with a follow-up meeting on November 9, 2022. During the drafting process of the calendar, we used Jefferson Union High School District's 23-24 school calendar, along with feedback by stakeholders to support an alignment of common school breaks, as we know many of our families have children in both school districts. Collaboratively and with much consideration, we were able to draft the school calendar with the following common breaks with Jefferson Union High School District: Thanksgiving recess, winter recess, President's Week, and spring recess. Start and end dates between our school district and Jefferson Union High School District differ. For school year 2023-24, our start date will be Wednesday, August 16, 2023, and our end date will be Friday, June 6, 2024. Our 3 professional development days for the 23-24 school year will be on Monday, August 14, 2023, Friday, October 6, 2023, and Thursday, November 9, 2023. The calendar draft was shared with the CSEA union leadership on November 21st, 2022 for input on CSEA holidays or any other related questions. All parties are satisfied that the proposed calendar is suitable for students, their families, and staff.
All right, are there any questions regarding this item? No? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the Pacifica School District calendar for the 2023-2024 school year as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the calendar for 2023-24 school year.
I will second.
All right, Barbara, would you take a vote?
All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, next, math instruction and support. Speaker Will Wilsey.
Okay, let me go back here. All the way to the front here. I think I can share this too, right? I should share my screen so if you want to. Yes. Okay, let me do that. I think I can do it. Multitasking. I can do this. Okay, good. All right. So, to start, this presentation is for informational purposes only, and I'd love to hear your questions and comments. This is a presentation around math instruction and supports, and it's broken really into three parts. The first part being some data, so starting off with a look at math data, recent data, and results from our assessments, and then a look at what are curriculums that we use for math instruction, our assessments that we utilize for math that are related to math, and then also our professional development that we provide. Starting off with the data, so this slide here compares the math 2022 SBAC comparison between the state, San Mateo County, and Pacifica School District. And as you can see, the state, the percentage of students who met or exceeded standard is at 33%, a little over 33%, San Mateo at 49%, and Pacifica School District at 50%. And when thinking about the comparison between these three, there's a reason that we are higher than the other two referenced, is because we are a more homogeneous group, and we have fewer students who are English learners and fewer students who live in poverty. There is the possibility of breaking it down and looking at the state's average for students who are low income, and comparing that to the county's average of low income, and comparing that to the Pacifica. And I have those numbers here. I just didn't include it in the slide deck, but I can if you have questions around that. So that's SBAC. And then when we look at our iReady, which is our internal assessment system, this particular slide shows the progress that's made last year from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and what it looks like when thinking about the multi-tiered support. Also, it has the progress that is made within domains of the domains of math. So if you see the tiered system, it has the red, the top of that tiered system is those students who are at risk. The tier 2, a percentage of those students that fell in that placement, and the tier 1 of the students that were at that particular placement. And this is a comparison between, again, the beginning of the year and the end of the year of last year. And then this particular slide is actually this year's fall placement. So this is our most recent data. And I actually put in the percentages within the placements by domain, just to see how you could see through those 4 domains where those percentages lie within tier 1, tier 2, and those at risk for tier 3. And then this slide is a slide that shows the English learners results from last year's 3 iReady administrations, and our most recent, which is that far right column, our most recent fall intervention. And this one breaks it down for those students who are at 3 or more grade levels below, 2 or more grade levels below, 1 more grade level below, early, on grade level, and
mid or above grade level. It should be noted that once you go from one year to the next year, the standard changes because the students move up a grade level. So there is going to be the natural for those students, for your students to, because the standard has changed, those students, you won't have that same end of the year spring. You have to make the adjustment from the spring to the new year in the fall because the standard changes. This one is the same kind of chart, but it actually shows the socioeconomically disadvantaged of 21-22 and the fall of 22-23. And again, if you look across, you can see the growth from fall to spring, and then the results of the new fall, this year's fall. We are having our next diagnostic in January. That'll be our next window in January. So we'll soon have some updated results from that. And this, again, is socioeconomically disadvantaged. And then I also put in special ed. So again, this is the same chart looking at the special ed for those 3 diagnostics last year and this fall, spring of this year. The fall. The slide 8 has our current adoption for mathematics. So we utilized Bridges Math, and that was adopted in 2016 for our K-5, and our CPM math program, which was adopted in 2014 for our 6-8. Our current assessments that we use for math is ESGI for TK-K. We have the iReady Math for 1st through 8th. We have Bridges end of the unit assessments for K-5th. We also have a numbers of corners assessment that's part of that, but I didn't include that on this chart. We also utilize the math diagnostic placement test for MDTP. It's utilized 6th through 8th. We collect as a district the 8th grade for purposes of placement in a course in high school for those students. And then we obviously use the CASP Smarter Balance Assessment for 3rd through 8th. The professional development in math content. So I've divided this into 4 parts. We have the math bridges. We have provided the Bridges Getting Started K-5 workshop for all of our new teachers. And this year in particular, we added those students that might have been new last year or even the year before because of COVID. We weren't able to provide those trainings then. And then we also provided examining a month of number corners and examining a unit of study workshop. Those were provided during our full day staff professional development day. And then we also had the Bridges Intervention Kit Getting Started workshop, which was also provided on that date and was provided previous to that all district date to our certificated staff, specifically our RSP teachers. And then CPM, there's the Foundation for Implementation Series online module, which is available to all of our 6th through 8th grade teachers through their online subscriptions. And then we did have a teacher or 2 go to this Inspiration and Ideas Institute. That was in our 6th through 8th grade 6th through 8th grade class. They were able to go to that over the summer and bring back information from that. And then on the assessment side, we've had a lot of iReady training and support. We even have some iReady training that's coming up in February, site-based training. But the iReady that we have had is the personalized and instruction overview. and the delivery of differentiated instruction, that's the one we just had in October, November. And then we will be having the Helping All Students, All Learners Succeed workshop, which will happen in February. Other math PD that's been offered is Reimagining Math for All. These were Everybody Counts math milestones, professional development learning series for our 6-8. These were offered as were offered to the teachers to, if they could go to it, they would get compensated for their time and efforts on that. And a number of teachers actually took advantage of these and actually went to the trainings and participated in those. And then, so this is, you've seen this before. In fact, John's presentation last time had this on the social, emotional, and climate presentation. But this is the tiered system of support in Tier 1, with Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 going from universal, which is for most of our students, 75 to 90% of the students, and then the select, where those students that are at risk, 10 to 25% of students, and then the intensive, which is the high risk, which is 1 to 5% of our students. And then, the restrictive line that's part of this system is that the more higher you get on this pyramid, the more intense the specific the intervention is. So for our Tier 1 math interventions, this is universal instruction. This is interventions that happen within the classroom. It's part of first instruction that occurs in the classroom. Some of the interventions that we have that are for all students or available to all students is we do have this year personalized instruction for all of our 1st through 8th graders in iReady, and that is a Tier 1 intervention. We do also have scaffold differentiated instruction that is occurring in the classrooms based off the analysis of student data, especially the analysis and what comes out of those interventions based on what the individual students need. And then we have instructional groupings, small group instructions based again on data that has been looked at from those assessments. And then there are within the iReady program, there's these resources, tools for instructions that provide Tier 1 math intervention suggestions and based off the data and actually personalized to groups of students. And in the prerequisite reports, and those come out of the diagnostic, and there are students that they actually group the students within the iReady, and their suggested reports from that is to suggestions and supports for teachers about how they might group their students and the resources they may use to support those students. And then this is just an idea of the Math 1 interventions that are happening at the different sites. And as you can see, some of them are repeats from site to site, like the iReady personalized instruction, the paper online for all the schools that have 6 through 8, and that's that online tutoring program, which we just today I got some really good news about that, in that the usage of that is way up as compared to last year, and so we're going to be doing a big push to continue that, to make sure that's available to students and that they're able to use it in the new year. And then small group instruction. Those are the ones that seem to be repeated at each of these sites. There are some of the sites are doing some other things with parent volunteers and student teachers, and looking at and reviewing data, which is a big part of Tier 1 intervention. Is the intervention is based on the effectiveness of the instruction that's occurring, and if the students are learning or if the students are progressing within that. So these are just kind of many of the things that are occurring at the sites. with regards to math interventions. This is not a cumulative list, but it's just a general list from each of the sites. And then there's tier 2 math intervention, and these are in targeted small group instructions, and this is when students are not responding to the tier 1. So you may have grouped the students, and there may be some group work that's occurring in the classroom, and that is the students that are receiving this tier 2 intervention. This is in addition to what they are receiving as a tier 1. One of the key components of a tier 2 math intervention is you don't give up the tier 1 stuff and replace it with the tier 2. You actually this is in addition to, this is an additional support to them. And then many of the interventions that's occurring across all of the schools are based off individual plans that have been developed through the SST process. So they'll identify a student that's having some difficulties or areas that they need support. They'll go through an SST process, and then within the SST process, a plan is put together about what interventions could be put in place for them. And then instruction that is provided through the use of supplemental curriculum. That's inclusive of the Math Bridges intervention kits, but also can be inclusive of curriculum or materials that are outside the adopted materials, the things that are utilized specifically to support needs of the students, the mathematical needs of the students. And then here's some examples of the Math 2 tier interventions. And again, all the sites are through the SST process creating intervention plans. There's math intervention sections to identify students, and then there's the before and after school supports. Many of the schools have in place already these supports before and after school. Some of the sites even have specific math support, and it's just not general support, but actually specific math support, because based off the data that they've looked at, math seems to be the highest need right now of many needs, but math seems to be a pretty predominant need based off of what the data we're seeing. And then the Bridges intervention kits. So each of the sites have the Bridges intervention kits right now. Each site may be using the intervention kits in different ways, but all of them are using it to support students that just need that extra support, that additional support than what they're getting through the regular Bridges program. And in the the tier 3 math intervention, this is the most intensive and individual intervention area, and this is really, many of the students that are receiving the tier 3 math interventions have gone through the SST process and are in the assessment process. Many of them are receiving this tier 3 intervention through their IEPs. So they've received, they've been identified as having a learning disability, and that their individual education plans are identifying what the specific intervention that they need. The tier 3 interventions are systematic, they're explicit, they are individualized, and they're based off assessments, and they're high intensity too. And also the math tier 3 interventions are interventions that, again, do not replace the tier 2 or tier 1, but are done because the students are not responding to the tier 1 or tier 2, so they are, again, in addition to, or their intervention is adjusted to be a little more systematic and explicit. I don't have examples of the tier 3 math interventions because they're individualized, and many of them, the major majority of them, are through through the IEP process. So I know that was a lot to throw, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Got it.
Yes.
Just one very quick
Yes.
question. In the tier 2 interventions by school, can you talk a little bit about why they're different by school? Like some schools have before and after school support, other schools don't. Just trying to understand the thinking of how each school supports their tier 2 students.
Yeah, specifically with math, they're different because the needs are different for those interventions. So a lot of times the tier 2 interventions or those before and after school programs, they're developed because they've had a number of student study teams that have said there is a need in this area. So I can't off the top of my head point out the schools. Maybe we'll hear about it when we go through the SIPSA plans, but there's one school that actually has a math teacher that actually students are assigned to come at different, or invited, they're not forced, but they're encouraged to come before, or after school, and they specifically get supports in a specific content area within that. So, and that was spurred by a series of SSTs and saying there's a need here. We don't have aside from Sunset Ridge, we do not have intervention or outside support teachers to actually do pull-out. So this is the area where the SST process would say we need a need for this, and then we're going to provide supports after schools, and we're going to fund it this way so that it specifically addresses these particular students' need in mathematics.
Any other questions? Thank you, Will.
Sure.
All right, the SIPSAs.
I will just take a little segue to get this started while Will is getting this teed up. So these important, energetic people in front of us are people that typically will be at school tomorrow morning at 7:30, and so this is a very, very long day for them. And as we know that in our return from the pandemic, that the role of site leader has become such a challenging one. So we are happy today to talk about our school plans for student achievement, and I think what you will hear is and make connections with with Will's presentation around mathematics. So thank you for being here all tonight. Appreciate it. It's a long night.
Recording in progress.
Exactly. Okay, Will, go ahead.
All right, so these are school plan for student achievement. I just wanted to briefly, and you don't want to hear me talking too much here, but I just wanted to briefly go over what a school plan for student achievement is. I think it's important to understand kind of the general idea of why we have these. So I'll start. So the purpose of it is to inform the audience of the school plan for student achievement. It reflects the needs of the school based on multiple measures. It is, the other piece of it is that it's aligned to our local control accountability plan, or LCAP. Those are the two main purposes for it. There'll be an opportunity at the end of the presentations for you to ask any questions or comments or insights regarding the SIPSs. Oh, the other part is that these SIPSs that are being presented tonight are for the 22-23 year. Sometimes it gets think that it's for the next year, but no, it's for the existing year. So the LCAP and the SIPSA alignment, most of the plans that you are being presented will have 3 goals. The first goal will be around ELA or ELD achievement goal, and then there will be a math achievement goal, and then there will be a positive school climate goal. Those key actions and services and supports that are within them have been look through the lens of making sure that those SIPSs are aligned to what the district's doing. So we're all kind of going in the same direction, that we don't have separate or completely different actions in our LCAP than from what our SIPSs are, but they are unique to their schools. And then it's a cycle of continuous improvement. I think you've seen this before, but it starts from step 1 to step 7. You're analyzing student data, measuring effectiveness, identifying goals, defining details, board approval, which is tonight, and then plan for implementation and monitoring and evaluation. Many of these steps have already been occurring and starting because these plans have basically been in place already. It's just the idea, knowing that it's a continuous, it starts all over again each year. And then the school site councils are work to create the plan. So before this plan got put in front of you, it got approved by the school site council. And again, they focused on the idea of making sure it's based off verifiable data. The principals or the chairpersons of these site councils have been working hard to make sure that the data is in front of the school site council so they can see the reason why we have this action is because of the data that we're seeing here, both quantitative and qualitative data. And then it focuses on student achievement, social emotional learning, and interventions, and making sure it's aligned to the district-wide LCAP. And this particular thing I wanted to put up there because this is where the funding is. So there's centralized things that are funded for all the schools. This chart, or these two charts, show what the sites have for site-based supports that they utilize these funds. So there's basically two pots of funds, and one is the $35 per student for material. That's the base fund that they have, and that's for papers, pencils, crayons, writing journals. They do get some of that support through the district, but that's really where if they need supplies or different things, they use that $35 per student. That's based on total student enrollment. So that chart shows as of 10/12/2022, as you know, the numbers change every single month. It seems like students are leaving and coming, and so, but those as of 10/12/22, those were the amount of students that they had, and then the funding is right next to it based off that. So if you took 547 for Cabrillo and times it by 35, you get 19,145. The chart that's on the right side, that's supplemental funds. And Ms. Peterson talked about this in her piece about that supplemental, about making sure that we're over that 20% so we get that 1.2 million. This is that funding. This is that piece that supplemental funds that they get, and they get $800 for supplemental funds, and and it's not per total population, it's per unduplicated students, which is English learners, low socioeconomically disadvantaged, and then homeless and foster youth. So those numbers are listed in the center of that chart. So like Cabrillo, as an example, has 85, and so 85 times 800 is 68,000, and so on as you go down. So that's funds that they can use, and each year, depending on the number of unduplicated students, and a lot of this has to do with making sure that they fill out those applications for those to qualify for that socioeconomically disadvantaged, and then our English learners. That's how we get to those numbers. So that's just an idea of how this unduplicated. And as you can see, the majority of the funding that they get at their sites, that they can utilize at their sites, is that $800 per student fund, that supplemental fund. So each principal will present data considered for the basis of goals, and then also they'll have 2 slides. One of them will be presenting data pretty much, and the second slide will be doing highlights from their plan. This is the order that we'll go in. I do have to say that Patrick Jackson, the principal of Ortega, he's sick at home, so he gave me all of his notes and things, so I'm going to present for Patrick for Ortega. If you have any questions specific to Ortega or Patrick, I can try to answer them, or if I can't, I'll write them down and I'll make sure we get responses back to you.
So this is not for approval today. We approve next Wednesday. We have a few variables going on for next Wednesday. So if you do have any questions, we want to know about that today so that we can turn them around for approval. The good news about SIPSA is that there's not, sometimes we get up against things have to be approved by February 1st. A SIPSA doesn't have a deadline in terms of when it needs to be approved. Okay, I would invite you, this is the opportunity where you get to stand up, what you've all been waiting for, and we just ask you to go back to the dais back there, just because, or the podium, because I think that you're very filmable. So Rachel Carry-On, brand new principal of Cabrillo School.
Go first.
Actually, you know what? What's actually really amazing is we haven't all been in the same room for years.
Yeah.
Right? It's great to see you.
Are you okay? Are you okay standing there so you can see the
As long as I
screens?
can see,
Okay.
the presentation.
And tell me when to.
Yes, so Rachel Carry-On from Cabrillo. This is the data that we considered when writing our SIPSA. We are looking at iReady diagnostic baseline data for both math and reading. And September's results showed us that 57% of our students are 1 or more grade levels behind in reading, and 78% of our students are 1 or more grade levels below in math. Our largest area for growth in reading is with informational text. Only 40% of our students right now are reading at or above grade level. In math, our biggest area of growth is measurement and data, and less than 30% of our students are are performing at or above grade level. I wanted to look at what grade level kind of performed the highest, and I'm proud to say that our 3rd graders have 58% of them are reading at or above grade level. And in math, our 7th graders, we have 43% that are at grade level standard. Our 1st graders scored the lowest on both the math and the reading, and we have only 23% at or above grade level in reading and only 11% on math. I'm checking in with the teachers and I just said, hey, do you think that this data, is accurate? And we don't think it's reflective of what our 1st graders know. It's their 1st year taking the iReady test, so we do think that there is some user error with the website, just really trying to understand what is the question asking. Also, it can be pretty lengthy of a test, so breaking it up into different chunks. So this is our baseline for 1st grade, and we're really looking forward to seeing an improvement. Moving on to panorama data, I really focus on these 3 questions from the panorama survey. 74% of our 3rd through 5th graders really feel like they belong at school, which is really nice. The panorama was only for 3rd graders through 8th graders, but we did see a drop off with our middle school students. It went from 74% in 3rd through 5th grade to only 53% of students in the middle school feeling like they belong. And I really think it's connected to this middle question. The question is, how connected do you feel to the adults at your school? I was surprised to see that only 18% of our students responded favorably. So that's something that we're really trying to work with. It's not so cool to connect with the principal or the counselor, but really just having positive interactions with our students while they're on campus. Thank you. Here are some of our highlights that we are focusing on to meet our goals. The first 3 highlights focus on our academic goals. We are lucky enough to have a reading intervention specialist who works really closely with our 1st through 4th grade team. They work together to identify students who may need support, and then they
come up with a plan. So what does that support look like? What is this group of students' area of focus? Is it phonemic awareness? And then either pushing in or pulling small groups into another space to work on those skills. We also use the paper resource for middle school. It's nice that our students can submit an essay or a writing piece to the paper tutoring, kind of get an extra set of eyes on it before submitting it to the teacher. The paper program doesn't give them the answer, but really asks them guiding questions like, what do you know about this topic already? What are the resources you use? So really just prompting them to find the answer on their own and then giving them skills to complete the assignments. We also are using the iReady personalized learning supports for students. We're lucky that we have lots of technology, and we are sending Chromebooks home based off of the SST process. We're hoping that they can embed iReady instruction in the individualized lessons into their everyday homework schedule. If they spend 15 to 30 minutes a day on this program, we really think that we'll see some advancements. Our last three highlights focus on our social emotional goal and our school community. So we are going to continue to implement the Caring School Communities curriculum at Cabrillo. We are really lucky to have a full-time counselor. I know that was a highlight. Her and I work really closely talking about the different needs of our students. She's very involved in our SST process, and she's able to pull small groups of students to work on conflict resolution and mediation. And we're also bringing Students of the Month to Cabrillo. So we have Orca Powers for all of our students, K-8. We do popsicles every Friday. The students love them, even in this weather. So that's something that's a highlight. But also in middle school, talking about our Orca values, outstanding, responsible, courteous, and attitude, and highlighting students in the upper grades that have exemplified those values with a certificate and a BOBA prize. And that's it.
We'll just keep it rolling.
Okay, thank you.
Way to kick it off. Okay, here come the interim, and the interim is the new interim principal of Ingrid V. Lacey, Kathy Alderson, and Tom Stafford.
Hi, I'm Kathy Alderson. Is Tom?
Yeah. I'm going to introduce you really properly then, because I'm going to say, I'm going to just stand here and be a supreme, and Diana will take over. So she's Diana, I'm a supreme. We're just here to support because she's taken over and doing a great job.
So when we started looking at our data, we started looking at the CAST scores and the iReady scores. And we started originally looking at those that had met or achieved grade level. But we really wanted to know and understand our students that were struggling. So we looked at our iReady scores at students that were 2 or more levels below grade level standard. And when we started looking at that, we noticed that there was a much larger percentage of students, of our language learners, our socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and our special ed students that fell within those categories. So that's where we focused our energy and really looking and understanding that data. And when we did that, we also wanted to take even a closer look, and we looked at vocabulary for iReady because we've had an area of concern where students at IBL need more help on vocabulary and academic language. And in math, we were focused really carefully on numbers and operations because those foundational skills are such important skills to ensure success for math people coming forward. So when we looked at, at language arts and iReady, in 2 years, we found that 20% of our students were 3 or more grade levels below, and 10% were 2 levels below, which is a total of 30% of our students were 2 or more grade levels below standard, which is about 135 students. And then on math, we had 16% of our students were 3 or more grade levels below, and 12% were 2 grade levels below, for a total of 28% were 2 levels or below, and that was about 117 students. Okay. Lastly, we focused our data on three major questions, or three questions on the Panorama survey. Similarly, we had students belonging, what the percentage of student belonging was, and 37% of our students responded favorably for student belonging. We had 59% of our students responding favorably to the question of relationships with teachers. And lastly, we had 13% of our families responding favorably for family engagement. So that's our data. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think you've done a great job.
Okay, thank you.
Keep at it.
All right. So our areas of highlight are going to be continuing to use the iReady personalized learning support in both reading and math. We're going to provide training for our language arts teachers in reading and writing skills in the Teachers College Reading and Writing Program. TER,
TCR.
Okay. Provide focus and differentiated support for all students through small group and/or individual instructions in reading, writing, and math. And teachers will participate in collaboration meetings to refine the strategies and develop lessons to support all students. Lastly, and for our goals for 1 and 2, we do provide before and after school tutoring, which is staffed by our teachers. And then for our social emotional learning, paper. We forgot paper.
Yeah,
We are using that. We're going to continue to use that.
The paper.
For our social emotional learning, we're going to continue the use of Caring School Communities curriculum through our advisory program on Wednesdays. And then we have, through our leadership class, we provide spirit days and lunchtime activities and other school activities. That's it.
Any questions for the IDL committee?
So on the previous page, with the survey that went out, the 13% of parents responding favorably to family engagement, I'm curious how you're thinking about improving that and getting more families engaged.
Well, we actually talked about that at our staff meeting today, and some of the teachers said they had really great response to having a parent reading day. So they come onto the campus. They they run a workshop on how you can help your student improve their reading or what to look for. We had people come up with ideas of having more communication, weekly or monthly letters to the teachers, to the families.
We had a really good idea about the postcards.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the teachers brought it up, and I thought it was received pretty well by the staff, where we would just choose, each teacher every month at the staff meeting chooses 2 postcards of students that they teach and just simply fills out that postcard to the parents and says a positive thing about that student and sends it to that parent, so that by the end of the year with your staff meetings, you've really reached out to every parent in the community, talking about their child in a positive way and saying that the great things that child does.
No. I might get in trouble with that.
No, you can ask us.
Before we get on to the IBL team, I also want to point out, hiding over here in the corner, Assistant Principal Tito Garcia.
I tried to get him to flank on the other side, Kathy, so we were truly Supremes, but he wouldn't do it. He's shy.
Thank you to the whole IBL management team. Thank you very much. All right. It's really bad when the principals stand up and all limp over to the sitting so long.
I know, God, my back hurts. Getting old. Principal of Ocean Shore School. Again, we're looking at the same data that everyone else is. 56% of our students are 1 or more grade levels below their current grade. Again, especially nonfiction comprehension and vocabulary development, I think that's probably something that we see throughout the district.
Math 76 or more grade levels below their current grade level. It was a little higher than last year, so we have our work cut out for us this year. The panorama survey questions that we focused on had to deal with respect. Again, it's not surprising that the 3rd and 5th graders feel better about themselves in the school than the 6th and 8th graders do. That's kind of the nature of the beast when it comes to middle school. I taught middle school and high school for 15 years, so that's right in my wheelhouse. But it does worry me that only 35% of the students had a favorable response to how much respect do students show you. For 3rd and 5th, it's 61%. And then how often are people disrespectful to others? The rate is about the same. Well, it's about the same for the middle school kids, and it's much lower for 3rd and 5th grade. So I thought it was interesting with the 3rd and 5th graders also that it felt like 60% of them felt like they were getting respect, but 40% were seeing that other people were not being respected. So we really want to work on that. We've seen evidence of that in the playground and the classroom with respect, to their peers, but also sometimes with respect to adults. Yard duty staff has complained about the lack of respect sometimes shown to them, especially by the older students. So that's something that we are really, and again, I don't think that that it's just Ocean Shore. I see people nodding. So it's certainly not just us. Next slide. So again, like many of the other schools, we're going to be providing some small group support for reading. We've hired a couple of paraprofessionals that are working primarily with our English learners and our socioeconomically disadvantaged students. We also have we have our split classes. Everyone has split classes, but we have lots of them by design, but it does prevent some challenges in math. And so we do provide paraprofessional for students in 4-5 and 7-8 math combination classes. We do lots of things at Ocean Shore, and we try to, my brain just went, okay, I'm getting there, getting back. One of the things that we really felt we lost during COVID was the activities. And that's something that is a big, huge part of our school. From Oceans Week to Indigenous Peoples Day, Diversity Day, Ability Awareness, those are things that are very important to us, to all of us, not just Ocean Shore again. But those programs really help us teach acceptance, understanding, appreciation of diversity of all types, health and wellness and well-being as well. We're continuing with the Caring School Communities curriculum. We are so happy to have this year is the first time we've had a full-time counselor, and she's wonderful, and I've already been, are you staying next year? And she's staying, yay. And she's going to be bringing back, it's not on the slide, but she's going to be bringing back our peer counseling program, which we are really excited about. And she was just actually talking about that today at our staff meeting, didn't make it on the slide. And the other thing that she's going to be doing is working with our special day class teacher to roll out the Zones of Regulation curriculum, which is a way for, it connects, I should have brought something with me, it connects emotions to colors. So green zone is ready to learn. Like you're right there. You're in a good place. Blue is maybe you're depressed, maybe you're sick, you're not feeling quite yourself. Yellow is starting to get elevated, and of course red zone is red zone. But one of the things we like about it is that we can have signs up. It's not, sometimes the kids can't articulate, sometimes the 8th graders can't articulate what's wrong with them. But having something, okay, I'm in yellow, okay, you're in yellow, you're not quite red lit, how can we work with you to get you to green? And having the common language school-wide is something that we're really excited about, and I think it's going to help everyone K through 8. And then we are also, for the first time, have after-school tutoring. We're providing some of our teachers are doing that as well, and that's something that we haven't done in the past that I'm really excited about. That's it.
Questions?
or you should join. All right, thanks, Jane.
You hit that, you just gotta hit it one time when I tell you.
All right, then we're just gonna do Patrick Jackson.
I'm Patrick Jackson right now. So the first slide here is the data that was considered. Okay, so the ELA diagnostic overall reading placement, 66% of the students were one grade level below or more in overall reading, 66%. There was no growth here from as compared to the previous year. The iReady math overall placement, 75% of students are identifying as one grade level below or more. That's about a 5% growth from last year. It was 80% last year that were identified there. The Panorama survey, to the extent, the question is, to what extent do you think that children enjoy going to your school? 82% responded favorably, which is good, especially after the couple of years they've had before, right? And then the Panorama survey, the questions you feel unsure about how to communicate with the school, 88% responded favorably. This was good, but still want to have further improvement. And we're eager to see where Parent Square, what kind of effect Parent Square will have on that. And then the last one with regards to the Panorama survey that was highlighted here is how much do you feel like you belong at school? 73% responded favorably. Good, but in that particular question, you want everybody. You want 100%, right? So trying to make that better. You can switch to the next slide. So the highlights. They're continuing to use as all the iReady personalized learning support for all students daily, both reading and math. And actually, I did look at not just at Ortega, but at all the schools, and it seems like that iReady personalized instructional use is way up. I mean, it's being used. Patrick reports out that the staff has really bought into it, and this is happening in the classrooms daily. They're eager to see the results from the winter diagnostic, which is going to be happening in January. The results from that. Creating a reading intervention specialist role, a specialist to work with students who are below grade level in reading for 6 to 8 weeks. As identified by the data team, and then students are added and adjusted over the course of the school year as data is analyzed. Patrick feels is the biggest highlight. Like, this is something that they've identified that they need, and they want to put this in place. So it's a really good thing for Ortega to be taking on. The library media technician continues to purchase specific level books for students below grade level and reading, books to aid language development for our English language learners, and books to support SEL. Continues to add to great resources to our library. Also works with Sam Dresden in suggested titles for that for those purchases. And then utilize student teachers and volunteers. Yeah, he did point out that this is a big piece. The student teachers have been big for us the last few years. We've had about 3 to 5 every school year, and the one-on-one supports they provide our students is immense and impactful. Continue to implement caring school communities curriculum school-wide. They put specific emphasis on classroom circles and cross-age buddies program. They continue the Peacemaker program with students. I think this has been happening for a while at Ortega. And this is a select group of students that help fellow peers navigate through minor conflicts at recess. I saw that in action when I was over there substituting one day. I saw them doing that. I thought the students were in an argument, and they were like, "No, we're doing our conflict." Sorry, Bobby. And then the garden program, which has always been a highlight at Ortega. This is the garden fellow from SEI hosts classes bi-weekly. The garden for NGSS based lessons, helped maintain school garden and host the garden events. This is a big highlight for them. It's PTO funded. It is a new highlight. It's this fellow is new, and the garden fellow is on campus every day for the entire school day to host classes and events and maintain the garden. And I think that's it. Do you have any questions? Yes?
Is the garden fellow a fellow that likes to garden, or is that a program?
I think it's a fellow. Fellowship.
A fellowship of gardeners. Thank you.
I did read that like a fellow in the garden. Yeah.
So I'm not sure what organization it's from, but it's something where they pay some of the costs and probably the outside organization pays another part of the cost, but the person is there all day.
That's great.
It's SEI hosts, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
This might be a question for the principal, so fair enough if you aren't able to answer it. But I'm curious about how Ortega was able to create reading intervention specialist role, and is that an opportunity for other schools? Perhaps other schools already have it, I don't know, but just noticing it on this highlight would be my question.
Oh, here's the challenge, is that person does not yet exist. And so
that's a request.
I think the interest is in hiring somebody for that position.
I see.
Recognizing that in the shift from general funds to those supplemental funds, but really recognizing the amount of funds in there that he could probably get at least a part-time teacher or share a full-time teacher with someone else.
He had mentioned to me a while back that they wanted to do this, and they wanted to assign supplemental funds so that to like maybe PTO supported or through other funds, and now with this Prop 98 money that's coming in, they can maybe utilize that, and that and then that he would take that pot and be able to at least provide a part-time or a shared position, possibly maybe with another school. It was, so he did mention that he wanted to do something like that. So I'm assuming that that's what he was doing too.
But that position does not yet exist. It's their intention.
Exciting intention.
And without him here as more comment, I just noticed in the strategy and activities looking through that a lot of the things were being assigned to the library media specialist. And I just, how lucky they are to have Julia Hall there. And
yes.
It looks like there were, and I know she was part of developing this, that there were several items that's like, and she'll take that, and she'll take that.
Yeah, she is, as you know, she is phenomenal, and she is really invested in that school. I mean, every time I go there, or I'm on site, she seems to catch me and say, we're doing this great thing over here, and we're going to do this thing. And usually she's trying to ask him, what kind of support money-wise can you give us? She's really invested in that school, and I know she does way more than she's probably.
Just looking through the detail, when, more so than the highlights, that there were actually several things that were assigned to her. And like I said, I know she's aware of that because I think she was part of developing this.
Yeah.
That's a good boost.
I love how the most number of questions went to the substitute.
Is that it?
This one was fun. Right. Thank you, From the Sunset Ridge, we have in the courts Dr. Ali Kudum and Laura Muscovich.
So did you get all of our names? All right, so I'm going to go over the data that we collected, and like other schools, we used the iReady, the Panorama, and some attendance information. And what we did is we started sharing information with our instructional leadership team, got some ideas about what kind of data they wanted to see, sharing data with them, going back and showing them more data. And then we have a site literacy team, so we shared some data with them, and then we have a site math committee, and so we shared data with them, and then we shared it with all the staff. So then we presented it and shared it with the school site council and got their input and made some adjustments, and then they liked it so far. So now we're going to present it to you. So 85% of our students participated in the iReady assessment and are using the individual licenses. 26% of our students are meeting or exceeding grade level standards. One of the things we're trying to do is use an asset-based lens when we're looking at things. 11% of our students are meeting or exceeding grade level expectations in math in grades 1st through 5th grade. And as of last month, we had about 37% of our students identified as chronically absent, and that's kids that are missing 10% of their school year, right? And right now, we try to really get on it at the beginning of the school year because right now there's 70 days of school. That means the child's missing 7 or more days of school. If they continue to just miss 7 days of school, they can make it through the year. But if they continue the pattern of missing 10%, they will not be, they will be missing a lot. And we know the research shows that kids that miss 10% of a school year tend to fall back in academics, and then kids that are not meeting academics are dropping out of high school at a higher rate. So we really want to address that and find out why kids can't come to school. 54% of our students on the Panorama survey reported positively that they can change their potential on performances at school. And the instructional leadership team really thought that was a low number and the area that we needed to focus on, and that's really kids' mindsets about how they see their place in academics. So if they're struggling in academics, they're not feeling like they have the potential to change that. So we really want to let them know that they don't have to be struggling, right? We can support them with that. 3% of our students are identified as homeless. I think that's the largest number I've ever seen since I've been principal up at Sunset Ridge. And I think on your slide it's a little different, but I just did some math while Will was presenting on the other slide. And 42% of our students are identified as socially economically disadvantaged. And 16% of our students are identified as multilingual learners. And now, Laura Vuskovic and Tony and I are going to share some highlights.
So some things that Sunset Ridge is doing to support our SIPSA goal is to, support our literacy goals with intervention teacher. Yeah. Response to intervention teacher. And I get to work with 2 paraprofessionals. They're wonderful. So my role includes working with students and with teachers. With teachers, I get to, work with them to help them implement, best teaching practices, which support those Tier 1 supports. And, for example, planning visits to other school sites or even in our own school to observe other teachers and what they're doing, and, participating in professional learning communities and organizing them as well. With students, we look at data and with teacher input, 2 paraprofessionals and myself, we, create small reading groups, small learning groups, and we work with them daily and monitor their progress and work for about 10 weeks at a time and reassess and see who needs to exit out and see if we can get some new students in. In addition to those, working with teachers and with students, Sunset Ridge has also been able to implement a phonics program for the K-2 teachers. Right before COVID happened, one of our kindergarten teachers was demoing the phonics program with Teachers College, and then schools closed, and it kind of went to the wayside. She really liked it, and we wanted to implement something that could have, that could be supported through K1 and 2, so the kids could see some continuity. And also, it would also, obviously support our reading and writing programs as well. So we're looking forward to the results of that. We just got it this year. We've been unpacking it. There's a lot of materials with it. So getting it organized, and we're looking forward to getting it going and seeing what happens with that.
What I've been working on with Ellie as well is the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, which is basically adding more school onto school for those, it sounds horrible, it's not. But it's for historically underrepresented, which are the unduplicated kids. It's basically, I ask teachers, what's your passion, what can you bring to an after-school experience for our kids. And so we have one teacher doing Kung Fu, one teacher doing yoga, one teacher is a huge anime fan, so she's doing writing stories through anime. So they're using their passions to bring extra support for reading and writing to our kids after school. So that's one thing we're doing.
There's also one student today was talking about the crochet class, and he asked his mom to come because he wanted to show her how he was doing in the crochet
Yeah,
class.
so the kids are really excited. They come after school, they bring a snack, and they go to the extra classes, and it's really cute. I'm very proud of them. And the other thing is our screen team, which we meet on Fridays, and we discuss kids that who teachers have brought to our attention and need extra support. And we go through the SST process, which is the Student Success Team process, where we look at academics, but more importantly, in this time of coming out of the pandemic, looking at their social emotional needs. So that's something that we do on a Fridays.
And then we have counselors, and they are providing social skills groups, individual counseling, small group social skills, and they are also doing whole class presentations on things like words matter and how our words can impact others. And so we're excited about that. It's the counselors definitely are vital to supporting our kids, especially at this time. And then we are planning home visits. We really want to look and connect with those families. Tony was working earlier this week on, 20% and more students, and really just kind of identifying who we should start to visit so that we can make a difference and find out how we can support the families. So those are our highlights.
Thank you for the presentation. The number that you talked about a little bit, the 37% of the students identified as chronically absent. I don't know what it's been like in the past, so I don't have a reference number, but that seems extremely high from at least just thinking about, 40% of students have missed so much school. And I guess it kind of goes to the earlier point around family engagement and just what are other things. Obviously, you have a plan to specifically target the families of students who are chronically absent with home visits, but just in general, things that can improve family engagement overall. Curious to hear your thoughts on that.
We tried doing some cafes, so parents could come in the evening time and connect with us. Right now, we really are using our screen team process to connect with families, using the counselors. We have some counselors from, I forget the name of the organization.
City Utah.
Yeah, so they can do family counseling, so also trying to get them in. Our engagement from families was not low. I think it's certain kids maybe and some parents that are concerned about their kids coming to school. So we are reaching out at our PTO meetings and we have a general PTO meeting. I don't know how other schools do it, but we have a board meeting that we had last night, and then the next week we'll have a general PTO meeting. But we're talking to families about our attendance. Last time we talked to them, a parent said, I was keeping them home. I didn't really realize this. I think it's a scary time right now with COVID and RSV and all these things. But we just need to get parents to understand. So, continuing to reach out and monitoring those kids so they don't continue that pattern.
I mean, it's one of the most important interventions that's out there, because if you think about losing 20 days of school, we can't make an intervention that's going to make up for missing 20 days of school. So that's really the intervention. This week's principal's newsletter was that, and then the vice principal's newsletter topic was get to school on time.
So, and I will say it's the worst numbers we've had. I think when you look overall, we're at 90%. We were concerned when it was like 95, 94%. We were doing some things, and it's not gotten better. So we really have to look at it.
Do you know how many parents have signed up for Parent Square?
Everyone gets it, but I can get you those figures. It actually would be good to do that. I think the important piece is for the kids that are really that extreme is that personal connection. Like, hey, and I know, there's someone out in front of Sunset Ridge. So happy to see you. That's a really important piece. I do think kind of district-wide, another piece would be for kids would be expanded learning opportunities. And so while Sunset Ridge has been the first one to be out in front of that, that's really something we need to offer to all of our unduplicated students, to each of our schools. And quite frankly, kids will come to school because they want to play basketball or they want to knit or they want to do, any of these other things. So hopefully that will help a little bit on that end. And hopefully the world will settle down in a way that we will resume to people feeling okay about being at school. Anything else? All right, Sunset Ridge, great job. And bringing it home is closed.
The students were at or above grade level in their fall reading. I also want to just clarify that this is at grade level, so if they're in first grade and they're taking it in August, it would be great for them to be at the end of first grade at that time, but so it's not that low because they're just starting first grade. So it's kind of, where they should be. A lot of them. 49% of our English as an additional language were at or above grade level right at the beginning, which was a big surprise for me, a happy surprise. The math data, 36% at or above grade level, and then only 13% of our English as additional language learners were at that. Then I looked at the school climate data, and that came from our data zone for the attendance and then the panoramic survey. And we had a little over 95% with satisfactory attendance at the beginning of the school year when we got that. So that was like September. And 63% of third through fifth graders felt a sense of belonging at school. So that's kind of our focus this year, is looking at belonging and engagement. Then it went down to 40% for the middle schoolers. And then for feeling engaged, which is kind of hoping that they'll cry if they can't come to school, that was 63% for the third through fifth grade and 36% for the middle schoolers. So we're looking at trying to get some of those middle schoolers, begging their parents to go to school because there's so much fun going on at Valamar. Next slide, please. And now I can't hardly see it because it's so small, but I tried to put everything in. So again, always looking at the bright side. This wasn't me, this was the former principal leading it, but they met all their goals last year. Academic goals, so I wanted to put that on the top. Then we're doing a lot of training for the teachers on the iReady, which this year it's a little different because every student, the district is providing every student with the iReady for individualized learning. And that means that I'm helping teachers at Valamar have all the kids getting individualized learning while they pull those kids in reading or math time that need extra support. So it provides them with this great opportunity to have small group work while the others are super busy with very good support. They can pull these students that need extra, 3 kids, 4 kids for support right during tier 1 time. So it's been happening at Gallimar. I've been watching it, observations, and it's working really well. We have a reading intervention associate. I would love to talk to Patrick and be with him and hire. That was one of my former positions, so I'm very gung-ho about that. But we do have somebody that pulls out the kids to get extra reading support. And those are students that, have been identified through their SSTs or their different data on the FMP assessments. We have a new K1 phonemic awareness curriculum through Hegarty that we purchased. And this is a training and curriculum because it has those videos where they have a professional teacher teaching each phonemic awareness lesson. And the teacher can either watch that prior and do it themselves or play it and do it with the kids. So it's a great start to get phonemic awareness in the classrooms, and that's K1. And the research is showing that this is like one of the #1 things that will support students of all the ones with the high need and being strong readers right from the get-go. So they've been really happy with that. We have a teacher that's providing after-school support for math and reading in the middle school. And we also have that paper, which it's not just English language. Paper is also math. So they do 24/7 tutoring for kids in both the English language and in math. Then we have our lunchtime clubs that are happening, chess club and ukulele club, trying to get some engagement going. And that's been very popular with the kids. They chose some different things that they wanted through like a Google form, and chess was #1, so that was a great, easy thing to go on Amazon and get a bunch of chess boards, and so that's getting started. We are also continuing with our Caring School Community curriculum, and we have our full-time counselor. The counselor is providing leadership to the 8th grade. We've been working together to find books that focus on character traits, and also each book has a diversity, belonging theme as well to them. And the 8th graders are learning about the books, and then they're going into the lower grades and reading to the young kids, and they're loving it. So the whole school gets to kind of enjoy the book. The counselor's going into the older kids and going through the books as well. So everybody can have a discussion on a book and a character trait. So that's the book of the month. And then we've started monthly spirit assemblies, spirit days. We had a unity day, which helped the kids not only come together as a community, but also it provided us with some groups for leadership, so they could sign up and say, well, I want to work on school safety or school volunteering, and they're forming those groups, and they're empowered then to try and change the school and improve it, and we're hoping that also increases their engagement, belonging, and that they'll all want to come to school every day. So, thank you.
All right, well, I thank you all for being here.
I do have a question it's like a blanket question.
Sure.
I'm just trying to visualize, if there's, I'm going to just throw numbers out there. If 80% of your students are behind in math by 1 or 2 grades, how does that look teaching them? Because, there's a formula that we follow so that they can take testing. So what are we doing to curtail their lesson plans to 1 or 2 grades below?
I can address that, yes. When you have those high numbers within a classroom, if you have more than a third of your students that are below that grade level, the focus really is on first instruction, right? That those tier 1 pieces. And I think a positive that has come from going through this whole professional development and this process with our iReady, and I know it's just one assessment, right? There's a lot of quantitative data that needs to be taken into consideration, but when you're looking at that, they've gone through this process of saying, here's where we're seeing our needs. These are why these students are 2 grade levels or more or below, and if I have a large portion of it, that means that I'm not just thinking about how I'm grouping my students, I'm structuring the way I'm doing my instruction within the classroom to address that. So
I was just wondering, how that's going, or that was one of my concerns just for the whole structure. The other thing is, I mean, you guys are doing an awesome job and you have a lot to do. Is there anything we can do to support you?
Money, cash.
Well, thank you.
I will say one thing that continues to be a challenge. It's better than it was last year, but it is substitutes. Is the lack of substitutes, and every day in a frenzy. And often it ends up working out okay, but every day kind of starts as a struggle, and that's the piece that. We're not unlike other school districts, but it is, we had to think long and hard about, are we going to go forward with that February professional development, because the November one caused such a problem. We put the subs in, we're, trying to plan ahead. But again, we hope that it will get better. I do think that we're in a better situation with substitutes than we were last year. But it's an issue that not a single one of these people here have not subbed. Not a single one of these people in most of this room have not subbed in the last.
So how is the hiring going for substitute teachers?
We're hiring subs, but they're getting hired by everybody else too. So what happens is they're getting pulled by other school districts on days we need them. And so then, like yesterday, I had a conversation with LSCA because we had our first negotiating meeting. But at the end, we had a side conversation, not negotiation, about substitute situation. They're like, sometimes I can't see these subs. Like, I'm looking for them and I can't see them. It's because they're working, right? Everybody's using kind of the same subsystem. And so if they're working somewhere else, they disappear on our end. So that's what a lot of our staff doesn't understand, that they're getting pulled. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well,
So-
thank you.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. So I just wanted so we did the plans today, December 7th, and then tomorrow I'm just going to make the final adjustments and changes if there, and I don't think there is many, if any, and then that'll turn around for approval on the 14th. So on Friday when it gets posted, you'll see them again. Many of the SIPSs that you see in front of you in draft form will be the same that you'll see for this upcoming approval meeting.
These lovely people will not be in this room next Wednesday. They may join us online, but this was a real, I appreciate your time today, because it was really great to have this in person and to hear about the great work happening in our school. So now we can clap. And you can all elegantly scoot right out that door.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow. All right, we only have 2 more items.
Don't see if there are at least
Okay, great. That was great. All right, so we now have the CSBA Delegate Assembly nominations. Information item, Dr. Olson.
So we are not obligated to nominate anyone from our board. Just coming back from CSBA, there was a lot of excitement. We heard people talk about delegations. At some point in your trustee career, it might be something that you're interested in, but Do we have anybody on this board that would like us to nominate them as a CSBA delegate?
Currently.
Great, thank you very much. Next item.
All right. All right, so future agenda items.
Okay.
I guess we're there.
We're there. So question is, do you want closed session next week for superintendent evaluation, or we'll pick that back up in January?
I think January, probably January.
January?
Okay.
Perfect, so there'll be no closed session next time. It is the reorganization meeting. We probably will not see Laverne, but we will have the election of officers, board member committee assignments, and then delegation of authority. We'll just do a quick approval, no presentation for the SIPSAs unless there are any other questions. I did think we were going to do the CSBA annual debrief, but it just doesn't make sense to do it when you're not going to be there, Laverne. So if we can pop that back to January. We were afraid of forgetting. So there's some kind of, maybe we'll get together and put together the presentation so that we can do it together. I did say to you at 6 o'clock that I hadn't heard from CSBA, and guess what I heard from CSBA? Okay. But I still don't know that we're going to be done processing. That's a lot of work for us to do next week. So, so we may want to do something around that. And then, but I would like to probably have some kind of work study in there, at least maybe getting started on that. So I will, if we have a new president next year or next week, I will talk about scheduling that. And then we've got the 18th of January and the February 8th. We are going to be extremely busy this spring. So is there anything else you'd like added to this agenda? Great. I really do thank you for your work. That was really great to hear that great work. And so thank you for your questions and for reading the materials beforehand. So.
Well, our next meeting will be December 14th at 7 p.m. at the district office. We'll now adjourn at 9:41 p.m.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.